She was a legend of Hollywood. He was a genius of science. Their meeting was supposed to become a story of passion, but instead, it turned into a humiliating farce. A 4-hour dinner ended in disgrace. He refused her wine, mocked her flirtation, and in the end, he chose a rival who was not even a woman. Believe me, the ending of this story will shock you. Shocking confessions, jealousy, deceit, and a finale that Marlene tried never to speak of again. Stay with us, and you will discover what humiliated the great Dietrich more than anything else. It was the strangest romance, and the greatest secret of Marlene's life. What drew this fatal beauty so irresistibly to men of science? And why was she so convinced they made the perfect lovers? Since her youth, she had been fascinated by scientists. Someone once told her they were extraordinary in love. Of course, so absorbed in their science, they paid no attention to other women, but gave themselves to the one they loved with unimaginable passion. And her friend, at times even her lover, Erich Maria Remarque, always claimed that his own brother, a physicist, was a much better man than himself. In the year 1949, when Marlene was filming in London with Alfred Hitchcock in Stage Fright, her friends, the composer Misha Spoliansky and his wife Elsa, suggested arranging a meeting with one of those obsessed scientists, Alexander Fleming, who had received from the British Queen the title of Lord and the right to call himself Sir for discovering the healing powers of green mold. And this man would become her fatal mistake. In London, Dietrich had a friend, Dr. Hindle, known for his achievements in treating yellow fever. He was the one who was supposed to bring Sir Fleming to dinner at the Spolianskys' house, on the condition that Marlene would take full charge of the meal. Excited at the idea of meeting one of those famous mysterious recluses whose hearts burned with hidden passions, Marlene refused at first, insisting she was no good at cooking. "Stop pretending," the Spolianskys protested in unison. Everyone knew Marlene was an unrivaled cook, a real Sarah Bernhardt when it came to stuffed cabbage. There was no turning back. Marlene quickly telegraphed Remarque in New York to ask his advice on wine, since everyone knew there was no greater connoisseur in the entire world. What advice did Remarque give her? And why was Marlene so nervous before this meeting? The reason for her anxiety was the fact that Mr. Fleming, as the Spolianskys hinted, had a reputation as a great wine connoisseur. Remarque answered immediately, adding a sly postscript to his telegram. "But do not rush at the man you are cooking this dinner for with kisses right after dessert. Wait until the lights go out." On the eve of her meeting with Fleming, Dietrich, claiming she felt unwell, even canceled the filming of an important scene in which her character was supposed to be killed, and devoted herself to sorcery in the kitchen. Oh yes. It was true torment of culinary creativity, for the actress's signature dish was scrambled eggs, but she prepared it only for those who earned the right to spend the night with her. And since Fleming, this blonde Venus, was about to meet for the very first time, that dish was out of the question. What would come afterward, no one could predict. Remember this detail about the scrambled eggs. It will explain a lot later. In the end, she decided on goulash. Marlene tortured the meat for 4 long hours. At exactly 8 o'clock, Fleming, accompanied by Dr. Hindle, arrived at the Spolianskys' home. "I beg you, whatever you do not talk to Fleming about penicillin. He cannot bear to hear about it," Hindle whispered in the hallway. A light appetizer and aperitif were served. Marlene sat silently, staring at her plate. The Spolianskys exchanged glances, trying to smooth over the awkwardness, puzzled by the long silence. And only when Fleming opened his mouth to ask Marlene to pass the salad she suddenly flared up and sharply declared, "Just do not talk to me about cinema. It is so boring." It had begun. Marlene decided to strike back at the scientist who was already irritating her. Fleming was stunned. Marlene waited for him to praise her cooking, but the scientist seemed absolutely indifferent to the food. Instead, Dr. Hindle tirelessly devoured one dish after another with the appetite of a man who had been starving for days. At the end of the dinner, Marlene uncorked a bottle of wine recommended by Remarque. A look of bewilderment crossed Fleming's face. It turned out he never drank at all. "How can that be?" Elsa exclaimed in shock. "Everyone says you cannot live without a bottle." "What do you take me for, an alcoholic?" Fleming snapped, offended. The Spolianskis snickered quietly. On this cheerful note, the dinner came to an end. The most satisfied guest was, of course, Dr. Hindle, who stroked his round belly as he squeezed himself away from the table. But this was only the beginning of the humiliation. What happened next would be forever etched into Marlene's memory. As Fleming rose from the table, he accidentally stepped on the hem of Dietrich's dress. "Oh, how clumsy I am," the scientist muttered, blushing bright red. But Marlene had no time to respond. At that very moment, Madame Spolianskaya slipped on a banana peel and fell, screaming wildly. She had broken her leg. They had to lay her on the carpet in place of a stretcher and carry her out to the ambulance. "Hate tush, the most important thing. Do not give your wife penicillin," Marlene maliciously advised Misha, who had by then given up on everything. Unexpectedly, this remark greatly amused Fleming. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small packet. "This is the only gift I could think of just for you. My very first culture of synthesized penicillin." Marlene was taken aback. "But I was told you are allergic to penicillin." Fleming grew angry. "Who told you that, Dr. Hindle? He has never forgiven me for being the one who made the discovery. We started working on it together, and so all this talk about penicillin drives him mad." What a twist. A scientific drama against the backdrop of romantic intrigue. What would happen next? "Let us run away from here," Marlene suggested. And so they slipped quietly out of the Spolianskis' house. Fleming escorted Marlene all the way to her hotel. They laughed, recalling the evening. What is more, Alexander confessed that he liked Marlene very much. She was pleased, and everything would have been perfect, except that the appearance of her new admirer did not suit the actress at all. He was dressed in some old-fashioned, fully buttoned frock coat. Marlene decided she would reform him. Do you think Marlene managed to turn this dry stick into a true Don Juan? Or did it end in tragedy? The next day they met again, and so their romance began. Every morning, before going off to his laboratory, Fleming left flowers and a note at her hotel door. Meanwhile, Marlene visited the British Library and read everything she could find about Fleming. They enjoyed strolling hand in hand along the Thames embankment at night. Alexander spoke only of penicillin. His cheeks flushed, he stammered, and he looked at Marlene with pleading eyes. She took it all as a sign of growing passion, but it went no further than those innocent symptoms. So Marlene decided to take the first step. What did the great Dietrich do to speed things up? And did it bring the results she wanted? It ended with kisses and embraces. Marlene took Alexander seriously. She taught him to dress more freely, took him to performances at the Royal Ballet, got him interested in horseback riding, even persuaded him several times to skip meetings of the Scientific Society. Fleming proved to be a willing student, happily learning the basics of this new life. She had achieved her goal, Or had she only thought so? Suddenly, Marlene began to notice that her admirer was casting glances at other women. Having turned a dry scientist into a Don Juan, Marlene had no intention of surrendering the fruits of her education to rivals. Soon she began to suspect that Fleming had his eye on one of the dancers of the Royal Ballet. After all, lately he often disappeared. He would arrange to meet her at the cinema, but never show up. Marlene sat waiting in her car by the entrance to the theater, in vain. Then he would call, apologize, set another date, and again fail to appear. Her worst suspicions were being confirmed. Who was this mysterious rival? Marlene was jealous. Chasing after a man was not in her nature. The offended star was ready to accept failure in love, if not for one disturbing detail. Fleming, just as before, began appearing in public in a tightly buttoned black frock coat. What on earth has happened to him? Marlene wondered. What is this woman doing to him? Horrifying. All her efforts had been undone by some brazen rival. And for the only time in her life, Marlene decided to betray her principles. She telephoned Fleming, told him she could not live without him, and arranged a date for the evening. Naturally, he did not come. Marlene rushed to the Royal Opera, where the ballerina performed. Fleming was not there either. Marlene was furious. Where was the unfaithful man? And what shocking truth was she about to uncover? The easiest way to learn his home address was at the laboratory. Marlene went there, walked down the deserted corridor, and suddenly heard Fleming's excited voice behind a door. Peeking through the crack, she saw Sir Alexander standing in the corner, speaking passionately to someone in the room. The narrow opening prevented her from seeing the rival. Blood rushed to her head. Alexander was without a jacket, his shirt half unbuttoned. Marlene was certain she had caught him red-handed, but what she saw surpassed all her expectations. My God, Marlene thought. He has brought the ballerina into the laboratory to make love to her right here on the table among the chemicals. She was about to leave at once, but decided she had to see the woman who had dared to take her place. She opened the door wider, but apart from Alexander, the room was empty, unless one counted the flask of penicillin standing on the table before him. It was to this that his passionate speech was directed. He was thinking aloud about the formula of an organic compound, as if he were declaring his first love. What a twist. Marlene understood everything. Sir Alexander Fleming was indeed a Don Juan. But the object of his fiery passion was not women. His burning love was reserved for science. There he was completely happy. In his illusory world, he had found the perfect mistress. My God, why am I not mold? Marlene whispered, closed the door quietly, and tiptoed out of the building. This was the most crushing defeat of Marlene's life. But the story was not yet over. A few days later, filming with Hitchcock was coming to an end, and it was time to return to Hollywood. Marlene did not call Fleming. He never contacted her again either. Just before her departure, as Marlene was leaving the hotel, the porter handed her a small packet. She glanced at the return address, then anxiously unwrapped it. Inside was a pink box of penicillin, the very same sample of the first synthesized culture of mold with which their acquaintance had begun. "This is the best gift I can offer you," the letter read. What would you have felt in Marlene's place? Had someone brought her the severed head of a rival ballerina, she might have felt satisfied and taken it as a sign of reconciliation. But here was the rival herself, in all her glory, and she had proved stronger. From then on, Marlene spoke only of the patients saved by Sir Fleming, and never again of the scientist himself. From America, Marlene for some time sent Fleming food parcels, since post-war England was gripped by hunger. Later, she learned that Fleming had married, though she never cared to find out to whom. Still later, it became known that his wife had died young, and the scientist was left alone forever. The fate of all truly great men is that they must be lonely, Marlene concluded. And for posterity, in her memoirs, she wrote, "These days they put up monuments to everyone, even pop singers. But I have not yet seen a monument to Alexander Fleming. Perhaps somewhere it will appear, and that would be good."